Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Rally AMA with Julian. So we have a few folks joining now. We'll wait a few more minutes for the rest to come in. Usually we get started a few minutes after the hour, so get yourself a water if you want, or a coffee, whatever else you would like. And I'll start playing a little bit of music, or typical Rally AMA music.
Into space.
Nice, Switzerland. Okay. Boston, Cupertino. Cool. We have a lot of different time zones and a lot of different countries and cities.
Mm-hmm.
UK. Argentina. Okay, nice. Cool.
Nice. Thank you to all those who are joining. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. So feel free to get your bathroom break in, your water break, whatever you need.
An appetizer if you're in the European evening. It's almost dinner time.
Yes, exactly. You can start dinner.
Well, unless you're like me in Spain. Spaniards eat super late in comparison to other European countries. Nothing opens before 8:30, 9.
Oh, wow.
They open, but they're empty.
Yeah, what's your typical go-to dinner time over there in Spain?
8:30, 9.
Wow.
Pretty much.
That's my late night snack time.
Yeah.
Yeah, time is a little bit shifted here.
Definitely.
Also during summertime, like we have sunlight till kind of almost 10 p.m.
More fun that way.
Well, in Spain, I'm based in Barcelona. So in Madrid, we have even later evening times. So.
Awesome. Well, we'll get started in just 2 more minutes. See, there's more folks trickling in. All right, we'll get going in just a minute. So I'm gonna turn the music down, although I know everyone loves our Into Space. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining our August Rally AMA. And the last day of the month, we managed to sneak another one in. For those of you that I have not yet met, my name is Oren. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Rally. And beyond the AMAs that we host, we also have built a user research CRM that research ops teams can leverage to streamline the whole process of recruiting and managing their own actual users. So we're not going to be talking much about Rally today, but we are going to be talking a lot about research ops. And if you are new to our AMAs, the format is pretty straightforward. Usually we'll start with some introductions. So we have an amazing guest, Julian, here. We'll talk for 15-20 minutes through some of your pre-submitted questions. So thank you all for submitting those questions in. And then we will be monitoring the chat as well, and typically spending the last half hour or so, sometimes even more if the questions allow, answering your Q&A. So don't be shy in the chat. Feel free to ask questions whenever, upvote each other's questions, and we'll either pivot in real time to the questions or wait towards the end. And that's pretty much all the rules. You can feel free to react anytime Julian says something amazing or funny that makes you want to party, whatever. So feel free to be engaged. And Lauren will be in the chat as well from our team. You might recognize her face and name from all the recaps and amazing content that comes out of Rally. So feel free to reach out to her also if you have any questions in the follow-up. Okay, all that being said, let's get started. So Julian, feel free to give us a little introduction on who you are and why you are so into the topic of research ops, and then we'll get into the AMA.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining. Different countries and different time zones. Happy to be here. Thanks, Oren, and thanks, Lauren, for putting this together. So I'm Julian. I'm a researcher specialized in research ops. I founded the agency called the 180, where I provide coaching and research ops services to startups and scale-ups. I've been working in research for 7 years, almost 8 years now. And I'm in research ops in a strange way, because throughout my career, I never had an official, if you want it that way, title as research ops anything. But I did an awful lot of research ops in the end, because I was the first researcher or the second researcher in a team many times, whether in-house or working with clients. I had experience working with people that were not familiar with research, or they somewhat had the idea, a VP or a head of say, okay, we need a researcher, so we need to build everything from scratch. So that's how I kind of got into ops at the beginning, saying, okay, I just need to get the tools or build the practice so I can work better. And in the end, I started saying, okay, this is interesting, and then starting to polishing, okay, what does this mean? And learning learning and learning by doing. And in the end, I decided, okay, what I really like is not just researching, being, of course, in touch with the users and so on, but actually what I like, what I'm passionate about is actually researchers and their work, and how can I make their work more efficient and more effective, and how can I help organizations learn actually, or become better at learning from the users. How can I become the enabler instead of just I always like calling this and my shift from finder to builder. This mindset of, okay, it's not just finding out stuff, but also building the practice. So that's how I got into ops, and now I dedicate myself to this and building teams and helping other people build their teams and practices.
Amazing. Love the story. Sounds like you've definitely discovered the force multiplier effect of research ops, that you can impact so many people to do more, better, productive, efficient, positive research, that just has such a positive impact on the organizations that you work with. So that's awesome. So to get us going, we've talked a lot about the time to bring research ops into organizations. You see all flavors of companies out there that have no researchers, but a research ops person, have 20 researchers, but no research ops people. So when do you think it makes sense to work on ops, to focus on ops, to prioritize ops as a capability within a research organization?
As soon as you can. That's always my answer. As soon as possible. The earlier you can get started, the better, because then it gets easier after time. So to think about this is, if you have more pieces to orchestrate or more people involved, it starts to get messier if you don't put order, or if you don't build the backbone from the start. So sometimes research ops, as you mentioned, you have 20 researchers and no research ops, or you have a team with people doing research and no research ops. Sometimes I have the feeling that research ops is a little bit of an afterthought, I say, okay, we'll take care of the ops later. Or in many cases, when you are in this threshold of 5, 6 researchers, say, when we reach 10, we'll have our first ops hire. That's usually the case. But it's better to start early on, because the more things you have, or the more things you have to then orchestrate, the earlier you start, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice is always to get started as soon as you can. I know it's hard because of the buy-in you need to get, and you need to show the value and ops. I mean, we are starting to showcase the value research brings to an organization, let alone research ops, which is still like one step further if you want.
Yeah. So on that note, let's say there is a team of 5 full-time researchers, and the advice is to get started now instead of waiting, but maybe there's not headcount available for a research ops person, or they decide to hire another researcher instead of a research ops person. What is some of your advice on how teams can kind of share the load or prioritize research ops, and kind of prioritize what's the most important thing to focus on from an ops perspective relative to all the research that they have on their plate as well?
So you mean when there's a team of researchers and say, okay, we're not allowed, or we don't get the headcount for a specialist, and we need to manage it? Because there are 3 ways of going about research ops.
Yeah.
So you can either hire there are some agencies that do this work for you externally. There are some fractional research ops that do it just a little bit, or they share many companies and they do the ops stuff for many companies. And you also have this way of splitting load. So researchers in-house will be doing that. So in this case, let's take the third option, which is usually the case, because the agencies that provide research ops services are kind of new. It's like they're popping up now. So the most usual case is the last one, where researchers need to split the load. So in that sense, there's a trade-off you need to make, because the time you're not working in ops, the time you're not researching, you're working in ops, and vice versa. So you need to showcase, okay, the investment we make in ops, whether in time, in effort, in capacity, will pay off later on, and it's wise to allot this capacity to research ops now, because this will make our research better in the long run. So that's one thing. First of all, okay, showcasing that you need to work on this, and not just because usually there's this approach of, okay, we need to deliver research, we need to work on stuff right now, we need to showcase the value now, and ops is kind of it's something that slowly brings value, because it brings value as it grows and as you perfect the practice and so that's one thing. And then picking the priorities of what to work on is well, in that case, you have my advice is always to map how you approach research, and try to map. You can even do it with a project. You take a project and you map it all together, and you say, okay, this is what you're doing and where you're struggling the most, and then trying to pick the most impactful things first. And then from the most impactful things, I normally try to chop stuff down in smaller, because in the end, when you need to pick what to work on, you need to compare apples to apples, So what are the things that can create value right away, and what are the things that we need to work on a little bit, step by step, that will bring value later on? So that's kind of how you should approach the things to tackle. Because if you just focus, okay, what can you give us value now? You may pick stuff that maybe is not as impactful as something bigger.
Definitely. Yeah. And time is the most valuable resource that we all have. So picking the right things to work on is very, very critical. And on that point, we have a question from the audience that we can jump to because it's highly relevant here. So Kyle is asking, what are the PZero initiatives in starting ReOps? So kind of to your point earlier about mapping out the process and figuring out the most important things to work on. Typically, what are you seeing as those highest priority, best items to work on and tackle first?
Well, so the usual suspects are participant. I mean, and I want to make this clear because sometimes we talk about this so much in research ops that it looks like it's the only things research ops tackles. But actually, there's a world of things. If you go online and look for the research ops community stuff, they have this map with all the touch points or all the things research ops can affect. But the reason we talk so much about participant management and also repositories is because these are kind of two big pain points right now, and like two trending topics, and this is where teams struggle the most, especially with participant management. I think in different countries and in different markets, let's say, they have slightly different like pressing needs. In Europe, the participant management thing is super important because of the laws and all the regulations that we need to comply. But in other cases, repository is the thing. So I would say those are usually the two big or the two usual suspects that teams kind of want to tackle right away.
Mm-hmm. Great. And on that point, I know we got a lot of questions in from the audience on how research ops can benefit not just researchers, but other departments within the company. So can you talk a little bit about how research ops can affect in a positive way product, marketing, design, engineering, these other teams?
Well, here there are two ways you can impact it. Whether you can give support or you can build the backbone for practices for in some cases like with research democratization, always continuous discovery. In both cases, there are people who are not researchers conducting research, so that I would count as other departments. So that's one side to it. And another side is connecting this like amplifying the voice of research and connecting the input, whether from both from research and from these teams. So combining the insights. I like to talk about, well, in the case of engineering, maybe it's a little bit different, but in the case, for example, of product, customer support, customer success, data, there are teams that also produce insights. So their research ops could be the enabler and the connector of all these insights to create a space for triangulation and for sharing. So you can create a way for teams to exchange and have access to each other's insights and put them together to also have more and better knowledge about the problem space or the customers or the industry. So this enabler / amplifier is the other side to it. So I think there's a lot of value outside the research team. So that's also why sometimes you can also think of ops without researchers in the team. You know, that's another option too.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I think with these kinds of things, it's also always helpful to hear real life stories or examples on organizations that you've seen, because obviously no two organizations are exactly identical, but we can all learn from real life examples. So of that kind of backbone or system that you've referred to, that you've helped build, that has enabled that amplification of the user voice across the organization, or has enabled that kind of democratization access of insights.
Sorry, can you come again? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I think it looks like you're cutting out a little bit, but I think one of the things that would be helpful would be to just hear an example from your background of ways that you've set up systems to amplify that voice of the user across the organization. Okay,
I'm still working in it, and probably on one, let's say, article or case for this. I'm trying to standardize different pieces of work that I've done. But to put it broadly, I like to call these teams insights teams. So, or basically insight producing teams, which are, as I said, customer support, customer success, maybe in some cases customer experience, even sales, marketing, all teams that might have any touchpoint with the customer or the users. So to create in a pool, it could be, I mean, in some cases I used Figma, or FigJam. In some cases I use other tools that were kind of similar. You can also use more structured tools, even Notion. But the idea is that you create cycles for people to feed this. We can put it as a bottle. You fill it a little bit with each of us puts a little bit there, and also can get water from there. So it's basically a two-way street. So let's say you create a pool, and the research team feeds this pool with insights that come out of research and research projects. Let's say like traditional research projects, but also the data team feeds this pool with their insights, or the customer success team feeds this pool with insights. and they take stuff from research and they enable what's called triangulation. So I don't know, something interesting came from research, and then the data team says like, okay, we'll compare it with what we have now, and we feed this pool again with our new stuff. And so it's important to enable this cycle of going back and forth and connecting and giving and taking. And what's important there is also to align on cycles. It's important to say, okay, if we deliver insights quarterly, or we deliver insights weekly, you need to align, because if you have a team that's working quarterly, in the meantime they lost half of the movie, just like they kind of lost the plot. So you need to kind of align on a flow that kind of works for everybody. But I think this system, I mean, there are two sides to this, and one thing is you enable triangulation. So triangulation means combining more than one source of insights and more than one type of insight, qualitative, quantitative. So the more you combine them, the clearer the picture look. It's like, this is like a movie. If you just have the camera only facing one way, it's not the same. Maybe you have a camera here, you have a camera there. So that's triangulation. So the more round you can make it, the more confident you will be about those insights. So that's one side where this is actually super, super powerful. And the other side is this part of how can I put it? Creating this thing together and all understanding better the whole situation and having access when you need it, because this can also spark ideas later on. What you have in this pool maybe is not useful now, but it can spark ideas later on. So that's also the other side of it.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great framework for creating a culture, really, of sharing insights from all the different angles that they come in from, so that you have that full picture. That's awesome. Cool. Well, another area that came up a lot in questions is all about getting started with research ops, and specifically once you kind of decide that this is an area you want to go into, how to go about allocating resources needed for research ops. So specifically on the business case, the ROI, especially today when companies are cutting budget and being more scrutinous around the resources that are being allocated. How do you make the case around research ops?
Well, sorry to say this, but I don't have a clear, straightforward answer on how to calculate ROI, because it's somehow similar to when a lot of the value research ops delivers is on what you save or what you avoid, rather than what returns. So it's a little bit like when as a researcher, when you say, okay, we prevented this feature from being developed, how much money what's the ROI on that? Okay, you have to calculate how much money you would have wasted. So it's not a really straightforward calculation. There are many ways research ops can save you money. If you streamline your participant management or your recruitment processes, you probably save money on the hours that researchers are not working on that, or if you're increasing your response rate, or if you're increasing or decreasing the no-shows, or you're improving that, it's also time that you're saving. And then you have to say, okay, how much does a researcher hour cost? How much hours did we save? You can kind of like have a ballpark figure of how much money you save there. If you create a repository and you have stuff there, and you avoid repeating research, those are resources that you didn't waste. So it's money that somehow you save, but how much money you don't know, because you don't know how many projects you prevented from being repeated. So it's kind of a tricky situation. Another one, for example, I can think of like top of my mind. I'm not familiar with those in all countries, but I was speaking for Europe, in the European case. Well, I mean, if you've had customers in Europe, you're probably familiar with this laws, regardless of what you're actually working on. So the GDPR, which are the data privacy laws, they have fines if you don't comply. If you don't comply, so let's say if you're reaching out to customers randomly and you're not following the rules, you can get fined. So if you do it the right way, you are avoiding those fines. So how many did you avoid? You don't know. So it's tricky to calculate or to give an exact number on that, but there is a lot of the stuff, and like with everything related to efficiency, if you're working on efficiency, it's like, yeah, we're getting a better, it's like a car. If your car is more efficient, you just like spend less money on gas. But how much money did you save? You don't know. So this is the same approach. So it's more about how much you save rather than how much is the outcome.
Yeah, no, those are definitely helpful pieces of advice. And what we always recommend when talking to folks is going back to your original point about mapping out the process, figuring out what those bottlenecks and pain points and inefficiencies are, and what you can do from a research ops standpoint to drive down the time spent on manual work, on potential risky activities, like you mentioned, not complying to laws in certain areas. So yeah, it's I guess about putting the full picture together of both the tangibles in terms of time and money saved, and then the intangibles, which to Paula's point here as well, is on the growth of engagement of user research, being the face and advocate for it. And that's really hard to put a dollar amount around. Cool.
That's a good one too. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Awesome. So in this kind of road to building research ops within organizations, can you offer like a basic roadmap or milestones for teams that are looking to implement research ops within their organizations?
Well, I always say find out where you can deliver the most value, or what are the big blockers that you're facing right now, and start from there. Again, we come back to the first point. So try to identify, or you can make a list, you can map it out, whatever you prefer, of the things you're struggling with. And then when you have a solution, then you say, okay, how quickly can we implement this, or what are the steps, and try to break it down. We can use a practical example for this. So let's say you want to build, you struggle with participant management, and you want to build a participant panel for reducing no-shows or increasing engagement, or so this is a big initiative that will in the long run will benefit the team. And then you have another initiative, which is maybe get a tool for unmoderated testing. So both tools will have a lot of impact. One will be quicker to implement than the other, but both will make our life easier 6 months from now, or probably even 1 quarter from now. So here, as I said again, to pick, you need to chunk down and compare apples to apples. So what are the steps to sign an unmoderated, a usability testing tool, or a moderated usability testing tool? I don't know, let's say Maze, for example. What are the steps to get there? So you need to go to procurement, speak with procurement, test the tool, and so it's probably 3-4 steps, not more than that. And what are the steps for building the panel? So when you prioritize a task, or you want to allot capacities, pick some from each side, because probably building a panel will entail talking to other teams, and has dependencies, and takes time since you launch the campaign. Since you talk to legal, then you get to CRM, and then you launch the panel, and then people sign up. This will take long. So if you do a little bit and you start mixing other tasks in the meantime, you have a constant flow, or you deliver value constantly while you build the big stuff. Sometimes I normally don't advise going just for the quick wins, because a lot of things need to be built or are like bit chunky. So try to do that mix between what you pick.
Awesome. So yeah, it's kind of the figuring out what the long-term bets are and the short-term wins, and balancing out both of those so that you can kind of accomplish all your big goals in the coming quarters. Start asking or answering some of the questions in the chat here. Going up a little bit, Michelle is asking on what's your perspective on how to enable growth opportunities for research ops, and maybe where this is coming from. What we've seen in a lot of organizations is that research ops ends up kind of starting, to your point, as participant recruiters, managing panels and fulfilling recruitment requests for teams. But obviously research ops people tend to want to grow beyond that as well, and do kind of more strategic other type of work as well. So what is your perspective on this, how the role can grow and evolve for folks in these roles?
Well, here the question is maybe where this I think it also goes case by case and also context by context. Research ops is, let's say, a field where people can come from different angles. I know research ops specialists who came from accounting. I know some others that were librarians before. I know a pharmacist who became a research ops. And I also know researchers that became research ops in the long run. So how you grow and what skills you need to implement will depend on where you're coming from. There are many things. For example, let's say one of the roles or one of the things where research ops can do, let's say you have to train stakeholders in research. So that could be, okay, you're just not only doing participant management, you now want to train, or you are asked to train other people in research. If you're a researcher, this is going to be pretty straightforward, because it's like, okay, I know I'm a researcher, I know how to do this, I can deliver that. If you are instead, I know a pharmacist, as I said, or a librarian, then it's like, okay, but that's not really so I will not aim there. So this is, it's sorry for not having a straightforward answer, but since there are a lot of people who transition here, and this has so many things you can touch, it will depend on what you're strong on, and also where you want to go and what are the possibilities. Maybe if you're a accountant and then you want to train researchers in research methods, okay, maybe you need to learn research first and then go there. So it's tricky.
Yeah. I think it's a reality that research ops is not a one size fits all within every company, and that there's a wide range of subspecialties and sub roles within research ops that you can evolve into depending on the needs of the organization. And there's also not been super well defined career paths within research ops yet, because it is still such a new function.
Yeah, that's true. Still shaping.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, another question here that has a few upvotes. So what are your thoughts on the ideal stage or time to request additional research ops staffing?
Okay, I think this one is about when you have a functioning research ops team, maybe you have maybe 3-4 people already working on the ops. Mm-hmm. So this is the same. I mean, this is the same as you would face any other team in terms of capacities and what you want to achieve. What is the perspective for these people? What should they be doing? What are the things where they can help? If you have 4, and connecting it to the previous point, do you have 4 people then just doing participant management, or do these people do other things? Do they want to grow this way? So I think it will depend on how you or what are the tasks they're facing. But normally I think it also should encompass or should be in sync with how the team grows, and how if you have, in the case, let's say you have any process where other non-researchers are conducting research, if you have more people there, then you can start making a case for research ops. Because if you are like 15 researchers and 4 research ops, and then you hire 3 more, and you have people who do research, like, hey, we are getting a little bit, under the water here with capacity. So that would be an option. I think it should match. There's no fixed ratio yet. This is also something this is something quite new. So there's no ratio. We have the designer to developer ratio. Have the researcher to designer ratio. But now the research ops to researcher is not defined. What we know so far by some studies is that the average research ops person supports the work, and this is from the user interview State of User Research 2023. They according to their study, it's one research ops person supports the work of 21 people doing research. So research and non-researchers doing research. In some cases and in some countries, I know by some friends, it's even 34, 40 something that people run a similar study. I remember, for example, in Brazil and some countries in Latin America, they did the same study, and it's even larger. So the case is like it should match. If you give support, it should match the size of the team. So that would be how I would push for that. And also, if you want to create a case, you have what we discussed before: how much money you would save, how much more efficient you will make the process, how much or how easy it is later on to scale the team or to improve the team or change around. So that's all the points I would pick.
Awesome. Yeah, I can imagine. 1 to 40 is a pretty wild ratio, but it exists for sure. And I guess on that point, what do you view as the ideal support model for research ops in an organization like that? Because realistically, probably one person won't be able to recruit for 40 different studies at the same exact time. So how do you recommend teams structure themselves and research ops support such large groups and essentially scale their own capacity and reach?
Okay, this I'll be honest with you. I don't have enough background on this side of research ops to give a recipe for this, because I'm working on the smaller side of this. As I said, I've been growing teams or scaling teams or being the first one, and then from there onwards. So I know there are people who start a research ops team when there are 10 researchers and then everything scales, these kind of large organizations. I don't have like the experience there. So I can kind of imagine how can you go about it, but I don't think I can contribute much in that sense. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, totally fine. Cool. Well, another area that we can talk through, which had a bunch of questions submitted, is on how research ops can support different research goals like continuous discovery and research democratization. So if you want to maybe first define these two areas from your own perspective and what they mean in the context of research and research ops, then we can go from there.
Okay, so research democratization is, well, first of all, it's a very sensitive topic in the research community, as you all know. So there are a lot of voices pro this, against this. What we know is that it's spreading and it's happening. So I'm going to talk about how should we tackle this and how can we handle this. Basically, research democratization had an initial goal, which was bring people along the journey. So, okay, make research visible, invite people, show them our work, what's our value, and so on. It started mutating into let's have other people conduct research, and sometimes it went full, like completely wild, and say, okay, let's have anybody. Just like everybody can do research. Let's have a full democratized approach. And this means anybody in the organization, or in different levels, it could be some particular teams who are not researchers, or anybody in an organization could conduct or can conduct research. That's one, that's democratization. And the other one, you have continuous discovery, which is it's a type of, I would say it's a framework. This was created by Teresa Torres. Great book, by the way, if you want to read. There are many things to polish and to maybe learn from there. Basically, what this framework says is there should be a product trio, which consists of a product manager, a designer, and an engineer, conducting small bites or small steps of research every week continuously. So talking to a small pool of customers every week and trying to go one step at a time and kind of like navigating through insights, opportunities, and product changes and solutions. So basically, this is a process where researchers are not in the picture. Teresa Torres says because not many companies have a researcher in-house, but yeah, she explains that yeah, you can later put them on top, so whatever. But what this means is like you have two processes where researchers are not the main actors. So I think there's a lot of potential for research ops here, but we can use the term support if you want. But I like to say get a grip on. I know it's a little bit more aggressive if you want it, but get a grip on is basically, for me, the right, because this can go sideways really quickly. If you have people who are not researchers freely conducting research, freely talking to customers, it can go, you can end up building a fruit salad of a product. It could be whatever. So it is indeed dangerous to let it loose. So research ops there, and both the other one, if you also have people who are not trained in research, you can introduce a lot of bias, and you can introduce all the things that I mentioned about privacy laws and repeated research and so on, apply here. This can be a lot of waste, a big waste of resources. So the way research ops can help in both cases, and now I will unify both, is in creating guidelines, in creating boundaries, and creating a backbone on how to do this, and getting the ownership of this in the long run. I mean, it's great, fine. I mean, whether I agree or not, and this is my opinion in this case, I will keep it aside. Whatever you want to do with research democratization and so on is important, fine. You want to have people conducting research, okay, I disagree, but okay, I'll do it. But at least research jobs can have the ownership and can be the glue to keep it to a standard, because that's the most important thing. If we have people who are not researchers conducting research, as I said, there could be bias, it could be wrong participant, wrong recruitment, you're getting the wrong people, or you're reaching out the wrong way, you're repeating stuff, you are using, you're asking questions like, would you buy this for 10 euros, this kind of things. So this whole thing needs to be tied a little bit. Sorry for the strong feelings about this, but I think this is where research jobs can actually chip in. It could be the way to control these processes and to kind of get a grip. And combine then it could also be, you can also combine it with more traditional, if you want, more traditional research. I don't like it calling more traditional because it's not just like, it sounds like, but you know what I mean.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it, and it clearly inspired a lot of questions from people, because there's a ton of action in the chat, but we'll try to get to as many of these questions as possible. The first one here is from Diego. Buenas tardes. He's trying to solve for how do we as researchers and ReOps teams support external departments in taking our research impact and then acting on those recommendations. Sometimes research can feel like a checkbox internally, and I want to limit that into it being more of a partnership with teams who don't necessarily engage in research day to day. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Okay, I will tap more into, I put the researcher hat to answer this one. This is more on my researchy side.
That's why you have both.
Yeah, so I mean, taking what you mean is like taking the output of your work and putting it into action. So there are many things about it. First, one thing goes to the genesis. So how does this project originate? Are you being asked, what kind of conversation are you having, and how are you both shaping the project into what's the expected outcome? What do they need, and how can they digest that? This is something that you need to kind of align on when you're discussing, because sometimes you get a request which is, can you validate this? Can you and even in worst cases, can you do a survey? You even have the method there. But let's say you're luckily out of that method choice done for you already. This part of aligning what you can deliver and what can they do with that is one part. So you then deliver that way, and then the other way is afterwards. So you have the genesis, and then you have in the end. So in the end, after you deliver, how are you delivering this? Are you just delivering this as a report? Are you walking people through your deck on a presentation? Are you just like saying, okay, this is what I found, blah blah blah, and that's it? How are you then moving forward with this? One of the things that worked really well for me overall is facilitating workshops at the end of each project. So combining, let's say you book an hour afterwards, you conducted research and you want to deliver, and you book an hour with everybody. It can do 20 minutes briefing, and you go in over what you did, what was the outcome, what's important, and then turn it into workshop. Okay, let's ideate that. Let's ideate on that. Sorry. So what ideas can get spark from here? Let's put it into action. Sometimes the action part is what's missing, because if you then have the insight and this, of course, one thing has to be said, maybe not all insights are actionable right away, I have to say that, but for those that can, a workshop can work wonders, because you really have that ideation part, and then it's easier for then the idea to get implemented, that then consuming the info they need to act on later on, they need to think about it again, they need to, and maybe a lot of things that happen in the middle. One thing that I didn't mention in my intro is that before being a researcher, I was a product manager. I hope people don't leave after this part. No, I'm joking. I started off as a product manager, terrible one. That's why I switched to research. In the long run, I spent a lot of the time wanting to talk to customer and actually doing research. And then I said, okay, I don't belong in Jira. So so at some point, my plate was full of stuff and full of people reaching out to me and a lot of input. So you need to, like, as we do with users, we need to put ourselves in the product manager's shoes or product owner, whatever the case is in your organization, and think, okay, this, I can understand if they don't read the report later, if they don't put it into action. So how can we together come up with follow the following steps or actions that can be extracted or ideated on from here?
Love that. Super actionable. And yeah, really helpful.
De nada. I answered Spanish. He said buenas tardes, so I will say de nada.
De nada. Awesome. Lots more questions to get through. Nick is asking, he would love to hear your thoughts on research ops supporting cross-disciplinary teams. So it sounds like not just user research, but also market research, customer experience research. How do you account for the nuances between all the different specialties that are also conducting research?
Okay, you mean in the context where all of them are conducted, like kind of in a, let's say in a democratized model, something like that. So I want to be sure if I got this right. So how can you support, let's say, folks in market user research conduct research?
I think if I'm reading it correctly, that there's market research teams, user research teams, customer experience research teams, that are all doing research with customers, and I guess there's maybe nuances in how to support each of these organizations from different recruiting needs or different methodology needs or support needs. But Nick, feel free to clarify the question as well if we missed it.
Well, okay.
So for added context,
supporting one team that added those specialists.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's first of all, it's a large team, or it's a very mixed team. Interesting. I haven't had the experience with all of these work together. So normally I had CX kind of closer to maybe customer support and so. But I guess if they're all connecting research, I think the support, the actions are still the same. So what you need to do is, like, if you need to find participants, if you need to take care of their data, if you need to take care of the research output, if you need to get the tools, if you need to train them in how to use the method, they're all these actions. These are like jobs to be done. These are kind of agnostic depending on who you're working with. This is what you need to do. Then in between, I think where the difference will lie are around the training people in how to do these things, maybe. Because market researchers maybe are used to work in a different way. They also have different scales, and they have slightly different, they use different things. Not that researchers don't use stuff market researchers use, but they rely more on other types of methods. So in that case, that's maybe the different, if you're maybe a market researcher will need big pools of users to dig from. It's like, same when you have a quant researcher and they are doing a lot of quant, you need a big pool there and you need to support them that way. Same in the case of CX, it also depends on their skill set. That's also market researcher and user researchers. There are also some nuances there in terms of if they're used to interview people and how. I don't know if market researchers overall, from what I've seen so far, market researchers are not doing focus groups anymore, luckily. But if they're used to this, how can we change that? And so that's on one side. And then trying to, what's also important is that you also work on how they report stuff, or how do they distill stuff. Because if you are supporting all these teams, you don't want to have, again, you don't want to have very different phrased insights or information. You want to kind of have a way to combine them, because in the long run you will benefit from that. So I think that's also part where you can deliver some support. Okay, how can we standardize? Do we have a framework for writing insights that we can get?
Great. Yeah, it's a helpful starting point, and I think connects to another question that Maureen had here on untraining and enablement, specifically for PMs. Where it sounds like she's in the process of trying to train more PMs to conduct more of the iterative research needs, so that the researchers can conduct more discovery and generative research. They're finding that PMs are overwhelmed by the training. How to trying to figure out how to teach them how to do research in an ethical, valid, imagine efficient way as well.
I have one comment about this thing, and this also relates to any of the things. It's either continuous discovery or research democratization. For me, something that I don't remember the author of this article, but there was an article written, I think it's a year or something ago, that says the other side of democratization, which is maybe some people don't want to do it. Maybe you have a designer who's just like, please, I just want to stay in Figma. Why do you put me in front of users? I don't want to do that. Or I want to live. I don't believe people want to live in Jira. That's a lie. No, nobody wants to live in Jira. But there are a lot of people who don't want that. And I think this model should be. And also, if you have people who don't want that, then what did you end up with? You end up with crappy research. You end up with people saying, just go to ChatGPT and ask something, whatever. You end up with I'm not saying all people will do this, but you know what I mean. It's like I don't know, when you had that subject at school that you didn't like, and you say, okay, I have to do it, and you don't put passion in it, you just try to pass. And this is what happens when you have people who are not engaged or who are overwhelmed. I think it's good. I think that if they push back, then it's fine. Allow them to push back. They could be able, or they should be able to push back. It's good. I mean, if what you wrote here is a situation, I think it's actually cool, because if they now say, oh wow, this is not just using a tool, then it's hard. Then you say, oh, okay, researchers are doing a hell of a work here. This is like super valuable. This is actually, it can bring a lot of value. So in the long run, they could benefit the image or the understanding of research overall. I think this was more of a thought rather than a question, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. It's I guess recognizing that tension, the healthy tension between the PMs that want to do research, that are passionate and excited, and those that are maybe not as passionate, not as excited, and meeting people where they are, because nobody is going to do anything that they don't want to do. It's just a reality. Awesome. Let's see. I'll go back to see if there are any other questions that I missed here. If anyone has any other questions, we have a couple, probably time for one or two more final ones. But yeah, Carol is asking here, it would be great to hear how you'd manage insights from all of those teams to answer questions in a broader way, /triangulate. So I think this goes back to the other question Nick had about managing ops for these different support groups. Now, how do you manage the insights across all of them as well?
Yeah, I think we went over that. I mean, happy to answer it again. I think we went over that one with when I mentioned this pool. You have this pool where people can chip in, and can also could load stuff and then could take stuff. And if you enable this cycle of going back and forth between each of the insights team involved, you can have something pretty interesting going on, because you have insights that are naturally farmed, if you want, by each of these teams, and then they can take stuff from there and also go and triangulate. So you can go and from one way to the other. So what's important is that you find a place where you can all do that. Well, first of all, get the buy-in from all those teams and align on how you should be doing that. That's the first thing. If not, the rest won't fly. Don't try to push it let's align and discuss and try to showcase the value, or at least get the buy-in for one round. After one round, you will see that it takes time for it to start, but it provides really, really powerful insights in the long run. So first that, and then getting a place for them to build this pool. I mean, you can pick any tool. I use a lot of Figma a lot, or Notion. Those are really useful. And then aligning on a cadence. That's also important. How often are you getting insights, and how often are you taking a look at this board? So you can kind of have active and passive triangulation, if you want to put it that way.
Awesome. And yeah, Dee, actually great timing for your question, because I was just about to wrap up with the same exact one. Julian, we'd love for you to paint a picture of the future for us. Where do you see research ops going? How do you see it evolving? What does the world look like in 5-10 years from now?
The way I see it is not just the future of research ops as one thing going separate, but also connected closely to the future of researchers. lately there's been a lot of discussion with okay, should we move to strategic research? Should we go fine? Of course, that's amazing. It would be great if many of researchers become strategic research or focus on strategic research. But I also see a lot of people moving towards more of this enabler and amplifier roles. Researcher, of course, conducting some research on their own or doing their hands-on work, of course, but then being this enabler and kind of connecting other teams with that. So it's kind of like maybe not fully transitioning into ops, but I see researchers growing into more ops functioning in the long run. Because what we've seen is like we have a problem in UX research that we have limited headcount at some point, and we face this wall of, okay, we're not hiring more researchers, so we're being asked to do more with less. So it's not a nice position to be, and we all know that, and we are aware, but we need to find a way around it, and we need to find I always think of this as very Darwinian, like we need to adapt to survive. So if we are asked to do more with less, we need to start incorporating ops into our role, like more naturally, not just when you build a practice. Because when you build a practice, of course, as I said, many times I had to be there. I had to start and had nothing. So of course I need to do ops. But I do see this more connected to a role in the long run, especially if you start getting this appetite for everybody wants to learn somehow more. So I see this way kind of merging. Of course, there would be some in large companies that have probably like full-blown research ops, and that's also fine. But I kind of see this new thing popping up, this new path opening up. So if you see more people conducting continuous discovery and so on, there's a lot of potential to chip in there from an ops perspective. And I think it's also on us researchers and people who are interested in research ops. If you see PMs wanting to try continuous discovery, say, okay, I help you out, and you help them build the ops. I think that's also the way we need to connect more. I always say we need to connect more with the product world, if you want, and start getting these exchanges and say, okay, fine, let's see how we can support each other and can we all learn more as an organization or as a team.
Awesome. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's construction happening right here, so I apologize. But no, I think this has been super, super helpful. Thank you, Julian, for getting tactical with us, talking a little bit about how to start research ops when there is none within an organization, and sparking some great conversation in the chat here. Yeah, definitely feel free to follow Julian on LinkedIn. We have some more articles coming out with him as well. Yeah, feel free to drop your LinkedIn's here if you want to connect with each other, and we'll follow up in a few days with the recap and the recording. Thank you, Julian.
Thanks, Oren. Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining. It was great talking to you and great conversation. And a lot of great ideas and great questions. So I mean, we needed 2 hours to maybe address all of them, but happy to answer them if you reach out to me privately. You probably look me up on LinkedIn and feel free to connect. I'm happy to chat.
Wonderful. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thank you for joining.